It's a big fight for you, right? In terms of just determining the future of your career. How big is it?
Yeah, it's not only big for me, it's big for the entire division. Like I said, it's a big fight. This kid's tough, he's got a lot of experience. Like I said, it's really going to show how far along I've come. He's got more fights than me. He's really good at winning those close rounds. He doesn't rely on strength or speed or technique. He just relies on his experience, and in the fight game, experience goes a long way. So this will show how well-rounded I really am as a fighter. Not only am I stronger, faster, better, but I'll show I got more experience too.
Yeah, you mentioned it. He's an interesting opponent because he's a guy who all of a sudden was there.
Yeah.
He started racking up the wins and people didn't really notice, and then he's gone on this huge streak. Why do you think, you sort of cleared that out a little bit, just that he manages to get that little advantage, but why do you think he managed to stay undefeated for that long? Do you think people maybe underestimated him a little bit?
Like I said, he's an experienced fighter. He knows, he's got a lot of rounds under his book. He's a multiple-time kickboxing champion too. So people don't really, you kind of see that, and then he's fighting guys like Paul Felder who don't have that type of experience. That's more technical and a better fighter probably, but can't put those things together. And in the fight world, experience trumps overall. So he's able to pick and choose his spots. He gets tired, but he's able to stay on his balance, stay on his movement. He's got a lot of fights for me to analyze. He's an older dude too. He's not gonna really. It's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. So he just makes do with what he's got, and he just knows when to pick and choose his spots on when to attack and when not to. So he wins those close ones. Plus he gets a lot of fights down here in Brazil too. So that definitely helps on those split calls.
You just said experience trumps all. You're a very young guy, so you bring other things. What do you bring?
I got the skill. Skill makes up for it. I got the skill, I got the talent, I got the speed. I'll be stronger, I'll be bigger, and and I'll be more technical too. So, and this will just show how I can. I'm one of the very few guys in this sport, and that's one of the things that I really wanted to bring to it is a really well-rounded set, not just in fighting, not just being able to wrestle, to box, to kickbox, because everybody can do that, but not a lot of people can move on the counter. Not a lot of people can move going forward. Being able to cut off the ring, being able to escape those positions. There's more to being a well-rounded fighter than just being a great wrestler or being a great striker. It's a lot more to go into it, knowing how to win rounds, knowing how to put stamps on rounds.
If you do beat him, where do you think that puts you?
It definitely puts me in the top 10. The way I see it now, I'm already a top 10 fighter, In this division's so deep, we can do a top 30, and it'd be deeper than a lot of other divisions, top 10. So, I'm definitely already a top 10 fighter in my eyes. This one will put me in top 10. Like I said, I kind of get, me, I got, my year already planned out. I'll do this one. I'll be top 10. We'll fight July. I'm hoping that Khabib don't run away. We fight Khabib in July, or some, we fight a top 5, whatever it is, in July, and then I headline a card in Detroit, November, December time.
That's very specific.
I kind of, each year, if you go back and you actually see, like, each year I kind of like put my little plan together. Sometimes, you're gonna get hiccups here and there. You're gonna get punches thrown your way. You just gotta roll with them and keep them going. If things don't pan out the way they do, I make a new plan and then I go for that.
Yeah. Speaking of the last time that happened to you was the Leo Santos fight. How hard was that for you to just? It was kind of like a break in momentum for you, right? And how was it for you to just deal emotionally with that and just regroup and come up with a new plan? It
really wasn't, to me, it wasn't really like a break in momentum. It was at first, to other people, that's the way they see it. But to me, that was the fight that kind of made me change the corner. It made me turn the corner in my career and really sit back and really evaluate. I've got 2 losses, and both of them have made me a much better fighter than either. I learned more lessons in that fight than I have from any of the wins that I have. So, for me, that fight, I'm taking it as a W. That made me turn the corner, and that's going to make me the better fighter. All these guys, everybody that you see in combat sports history, they all have losses. Not many at that stage. I think the difference between me is I took that loss at a big stage, and more people saw it. But I still got that same experience that a lot of guys, like Conor came into the UFC with already 2 losses. Even guys like Mayweather that went undefeated in his pro career, he had a lot of losses as an amateur, and those losses are where you build and really learn how to those are your experience. That's why I say experience trumps all. So that's just a good experience for me, and it just adds to my character and to my career even more.
How is it for you coming down here to fight? Because obviously it's a tricky flight. There's humidity, which sometimes is a factor for the weight cut, and just the time, because it's a little later in the night.
It's different, That's why we got out here early. I came out here 10 days ago. I've already been here a week. I'm totally adjusted now. I think 2 days ago was when my body kind of finally got adjusted and finally started feeling normal. Those long flights, they're bad on the joints. They're bad for the flight. And it can be a hassle. So we tried to play it smart. I spent the money, came down early, and really invested in myself and in my career. So it should be no problem. Like I said, I'm fighting a Brazilian down in Brazil, so it's even better for me. It makes sure that I got to blow him out the water. I really got to knock him out, especially fighting an experienced guy who knows how to win tough, close fights.
You're a guy who's well-spoken, and then you like promoting your fights, and you talk a lot, and you interact, and you're fighting a guy who does none of that leading up to the fight. He's kind of like a folk hero here, we call him. He's kind of popular because he's very charismatic, but he's not a guy who's gonna go and just hype up the fight. How is it for you just to do that process of fight promotion, because you don't really have somebody to feed off?
It's hard, and the dude doesn't even speak English, so it's like hard for me to, I've seen him a couple of times around check-in and whatnot, and it's hard for me to get a read, because not only does he, I don't speak Portuguese, and it's just a different, it's like a different culture, so it's kind of hard for me to get a read. I like to, that goes with being a well-rounded fighter. I like to see how, if I'm fighting a guy like the last kid I fought, who's got a lot of heart, I try and take that away from him. I try and disrespect him a little bit, piss him off, and make him make mistakes. If I'm fighting somebody who I know is like a really good competitor, then I'll drag him into a dog fight or something. It's hard to read, because it's a different culture. But again, that's just more experience. So it's gonna be good, and it's gonna be interesting how I tackle this one, especially when I get in his face during weigh-ins, because he ain't gonna understand me. I'm not gonna understand him. The crowd's gonna be behind him. They not gonna understand me either. So it'll be fun.
To step away from your fight a little bit, because you're a guy who talks about various issues. You've spoken out about many things on Twitter, and currently we have a champion, Tyron Woodley, who got into kind of like hot water with the fans because he addressed issues that were important to him. I guess what I wanted to ask is, as a person who speaks up and who likes to use that platform, how do you assess the situation? Do you think that there is some form of like unfair treatment towards Tyron?
Towards Tyron, not necessarily. He's got the right message. I just think he's going about it the wrong way, and I think that's how a lot of people feel. It is very hard, no matter who you are. It's hard to ask people to like you, you know what I mean? That's kind of like what it seems like he's trying to do is ask people to like him, and that's just not gonna happen. That's gonna get you even more haters, and then and then it's just gonna blow up from there. Then you gotta so I don't necessarily think in his issue. He's got the right ideas. I just think he's going about it the wrong way, and he's promoting it the wrong way. I'm with him on a lot of stuff, but I just wish that he would he's got a bigger platform than me, obviously being the champ, and reaching a lot more people. But I just wish he would go about it a little bit differently.
But do you think that it should be talked about more? Because he talked a lot about racial prejudice, and people deny it, but they don't necessarily
absolutely
come from a place where they're
it's hard for people to understand if they've never been there. You know what I mean? It's very hard. Like that's one thing I've always said is I never judge anybody for how they live their life. I know a lot of my friends have ended up in jail or in prison, selling drugs or stealing, but that's just because I didn't grow up. I've grown up with them, but I didn't grow up in their situation. Everybody's different, and a lot of people, he don't understand. He's talking to people that have never even seen that, you know what I mean? So for him, it's frustrating for him to get that out there because people don't understand, and it's hard to make them understand. So that's why I say he's going about it the wrong way, because he's trying to convince somebody of something they just don't know about. But it does need to be talked about more in America in general. I think this is the one. It's one of the biggest issues because it affects such a large portion of the population, and people try and sweep it under the rug. People. It's the only. That Black Lives Matter movement in particular. Which. Granted, it's probably like a bad name. They could have probably came up with a better title for the damn thing, but the message is still the same. People just that's the one. You don't hear about gay rights, or you don't hear about women's rights being attacked. Or somebody saying that, oh, you're gender baiting or whatever it is. You know what I mean? That in itself, trying to sweep it under the rug in itself, it is an example of racial profiling. So I mean, it's a problem. It's something that we should talk about more, but it's hard to talk about because a lot of people don't understand it.
As an outspoken athlete, how is it to deal? Because on the one hand, it's something that leverages your brand, but on the other hand, you might get sort of controversy. You'll have people that like you or things like that. As an outspoken athlete, how is it for you to just balance that, saying what you need to say and just dealing with whatever heat comes with it?
It's very hard overall. I did a interview with Brian Stan yesterday, and he was asking me a lot about my background and where I came from. A lot of people know I grew up in Detroit, and I was able to move my family out after my first UFC fight, and we moved over to Vegas. And he was asking me, why isn't this talked about more in the UFC? Why isn't this a bigger story? And the answer is, people don't want to hear it. People don't want to hear that. People want to hear controversy. They like controversy. People like drama. They want to hear how tough you had. They don't want to hear, even the people that are in it. Even the people that are from Detroit, they don't want to hear about you making it out. They want to hear about how bad you got it because they didn't make it out. So they hate you even more for that. It's just, you're gonna get hate either way. You're gonna get love either way. So you just have to take the hate with the love. With guys like Tyrone, I think he takes the hate a little personally. I never take it personal. I got a lot of people that hate me. I got a lot of people that like me. I just don't take it personal. I think people, more than anything, respect honesty, and they hate when you're trying to portray something that you're not. So I just always try and be me, and people know me. If you ask me a question, I'm gonna tell you straight up. So I think that's what people respect the most. Whether they hate it or they love it, it's about the respect for me. So just don't beg anybody to love you. Just be you.